Emotions are not things that we have. Emotions are things that we use and we do. Whether or not someone is aware of why they are using them is a different matter. But the reason I talk about emotional control rather than management is because, no one is born with anxiety. But what happens is anxiety becomes a learned emotional response. So, for example, when I step into that uncomfortable situation over there and there's people judging me, I fear the consequences of it. There's everything that could go wrong. What happens is I get this feeling arise within me. I get this swarming sensation. And what happens is, that becomes so intense that I don't feel like I can do that over there. All of my basis is around arming and enhancing the emotional skill set, tools, if you want to call it, that we have within us, that regardless of what goes on out there, the volatility of life in many different areas, there's a knowing within me, not just up here in my head, but actually within my emotions that says, you know what, I can deal with this.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Demystifying Mental Toughness podcast. I'm David Charlton and I'm excited to continue my conversation with Matt Young. If you caught last week's episode, you're going to know that we started exploring emotional control and why it matters. Well, this week, we're going to go even deeper. We're going to get into the practical side of things and how you can actually build the systems and the processes that create lasting change. We talk about the critical difference between managing your emotions and taking control of them. Emotional mastery, if you like. It can be a real, massive game changer. We also dive into what Matt calls your playbook, the specific tools and strategies that you need not just to survive uncomfortable situations, but thrive in them. We also go on to touch on something really, really important. Why so many of us get stuck waiting for things to fall apart before we actually take action, when the real winners are actually building the foundations up from day one. So, whether you're dealing with anxiety, procrastination, or you just want to perform at your best more often, this episode has got some really practical takeaways that you can start to use today. Let's jump in. What would you say to the person, the practitioner, the coach who has this belief that you can't control emotions and that, I guess, emotional management would be their buzzword as opposed to emotional control?
I think it's a very fair question because I think it's something that is honestly, in a roundabout way, the key thing that I get. It's the key thing that I get when people come to me and they say, Matt, you talk about overcoming and taking control of anxiety. You can't do that. You can only cope and manage with it. Okay, that's fair. I can understand why people think that because people have been, I don't want to say misled, but people have been taught a certain way that these emotions are things that happen to you. Anxiety, fear, depression, these things are things that happen to you. No one obviously consciously wants these things to happen, of course not. But like I said at the start of this episode, there's two parts of your mind. There's the thinking mind and the emotional mind. And I don't believe, and my research and expertise and essentially results in this area show that emotions are not things that we have. Emotions are things that we use and we do. Now, whether or not someone is aware of why they are using them is a different matter. So, for example, the reason I talk about emotional control rather than management is because, no one is born with anxiety. No one is born, child isn't born with that being who they are. But what happens is anxiety becomes a learned emotional response. So, for example, when I step into that uncomfortable situation over there and there's people judging me, I fear the consequences of it. There's everything that could go wrong. What happens is I get this feeling arise within me. I get this swarming sensation. And what happens is, that becomes so intense that I don't feel like I can do that over there. Now, that happens one time. Now, the traditional quote-unquote approach would be, right, here's how you can manage that when that comes up. My approach to that is, no, that has come up, that trait has come up to serve the purpose of keeping you away from dealing with that thing over there, which I think everyone would agree on. But why did that trait show up? Because it might have shown up for Steve, but for Sue and for Sally and for Simon, it didn't show up. So why did it show up for Steve? Well, the reason is because they didn't feel more in control of dealing with that situation than they were out of control of the consequences of it happening. So therefore, the trait of anxiety in this way gave them the false sense that if you use this trait, we can control what happens because we can keep you away from dealing with that over there. Management, I believe, is very much, in my opinion, the surface level deal with what we see on the surface. The control side of things that I talk about is that we don't have anxiety, we don't have depression. No, we use and we do them. We just have to learn and uncover and understand why, which is a big part I teach, because then you have the playbook and then you go, what's that before? But now I recognize it. I can see how I use it. I can see how I do it. I can see that every time I feel low and sad and upset, my partner comes to reassure me and it makes me feel better. That doesn't mean I have depression. It means that I am, quote unquote, using certain traits here to be able to get deeper emotional needs met within me. So I know this is a deeper answer here, but when you can understand that side of it, you understand this simply comes down to an element of control within myself of how am I meeting my needs, my emotional needs to control them, as opposed to using these traits to do the job for me. This is where I go into detail with people, and when I'm working with my clients, it can take me maybe 20, 30 minutes and share a few things on screen that shows people how this works. But then people, before, I've never seen it from that perspective. That makes complete sense. Then all of a sudden it doesn't become a management. It becomes, how can I take control of this? Great. Now we can get to work. But that's the key differences of where it is. I think a lot of therapies, without negating their importance, because so many of them are wonderful, and I know many wonderful therapists who do this role. They teach management, but they don't understand the deeper emotional drivers, hence why they can't teach the control.
Yeah. Just thinking about it from in the psychology or psychological literature, you've got a theory out there, self-determination theory, which they look at motivation essentially. And in amongst all of that, you've got the three basic psychological needs, which basically help people like feel better in themselves. One of them is autonomy, which is actually having a sense of control. The other one is connectedness, be that to other people and nature. And then the third one is mastery. Well, it's competence, but essentially it's being a master of your craft. That sporting capacity in football, and giving it 100% in training and matches. To educationally, being fully focused, and likewise in work. So I can see the crossover there, where if you do feel more in control of the situation at hand, you've got a can-do attitude towards life in general. Yeah, you're gonna, I don't know, you're getting towards intrinsic motivation, aren't you? And you're pushing away this like real feeling of helplessness.
Yeah, right. And I think, to be transparent, we can't control, well, I certainly can't. So other people smarter than me might be able to, but we can't control what's going to happen in the next 10 minutes, let alone the next 10 hours. Something might happen on this call, or anything could happen. But what I do have complete control in my language over is me, is my emotions, is my mind. And like I said, when you understand the internal playbook of that, of how to master that side of it, it's never that I'm looking, or what I do with my clients is about trying to control some of the outcomes, because that's where we're subject to volatility. That's where I'm subject to, I've done everything I can to get that outcome. Now I'm placing the control in that manager of whether they pick me on. Or depending on what side the manager got out of bed, they might not fancy it this morning. So all of that I've built up is now so that's never where my basis is. All of my basis is around arming and enhancing the emotional skill set, tools, if you want to call it, that we have within us, that regardless of what goes on out there, the volatility of life in many different areas, there's a knowing within me, not just up here in my head, but actually within my emotions, that says, you know what, I can deal with this. I know I'm going to be okay. I know how to navigate this situation. We all need support. We all need guidance. We all need advice. I'm no different in that area. But this is essentially where the foundation of what I teach comes from, because otherwise you're just in a situation where you're constantly at the beck and call of things that are happening to you, and you're just trying to put yourself in control of and just get on top of a situation. That's why most people are stressed or overwhelmed or whatever it may be, because they're always in a situation where they're just trying to control these things. And when it comes to what you sort of said here around the three factors, the autonomy, absolutely. I can completely understand the framework of why we would go down that route. I would say it can lend itself to being a little bit deeper than just making myself feel like I'm intrinsically motivated to deal with this and I've got a can do sort of, I can do it. That's a big part, but there's a deeper part of me that knows that, right.
Yeah. I I guess when you dig that a little bit deeper, so by focusing on that element of trying to take control of a situation, you're helping someone, you're probably educating people, changing their perspective to help them get comfortable feeling uncomfortable, to deal with the chaos and just things that happen in everyday life. And then what is it fair to say you're then designing you talked about playbook, I mentioned processes, you're designing a playbook processes in order to, yeah, to deal with some of these uncomfortable emotions that we're all going to experience.
Yeah. So to a certain extent, yes. So an example of this would be, recently, very similar to myself, I was working with a professional sports person who, when they stepped onto their field of play, if I can put it in that way, when they stepped onto their field of play, they would find themselves in a situation where heart would start racing, thoughts would start running away with them 100 mile an hour, legs would start to feel heavy and couldn't move, and all of these types of things. Okay, cool. So my initial process there is why? What is it that is causing that? What is it that where your mind goes? What is it that your worst case scenario? What is it that you're stressing, worrying, fearing that could happen? From that place, it's a case of understanding then, because then this person would say, you know what, I can't step out onto my field because of my anxiety. The general route would be, okay, let's manage that to get you out on the field of play. And that's where I like to go a little bit deeper to go, no, this anxiety is currently bridging the gap. Let's eliminate anxiety. Let's enhance you so that anxiety now doesn't have to do that role. Because currently that anxiety is doing that role that's trying to keep you away from dealing with that thing that's really uncomfortable over there. So instead, what is it that you want to feel more of? I want to feel more confidence, purpose, passion, drive, excitement, peace when I step onto that field of play. Great. What do we need to do to emotionally upgrade and enhance that part of you? Because when we start to put that playbook, as we called it, in place for them, start to enhance those emotional parts within them, and obviously there's a certain element of what I do here, we're qualified and things like that to be able to help people in that way. Then when they step onto that field of play, this old trait of anxiety is nowhere to be seen because that was only filling the void that was previously left from them being not in control of how they wanted to feel. So that would be the sort of clear analogy of someone who I've worked with recently who has gone through that process and gone out the other side and doing very well now, because that's the core essence of it, not just managing, okay, this is how we can try and cope with this situation in the best way.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I was thinking about my own little playbook currently at the moment where like a lot of people, if you're working from home, which I do quite a lot, it's very easy to get stuck on your laptop for 2, 3 hours, 4 hours plus. So part of my little playbook is, well, I suppose to be able to control my emotional state and my focus and what have you is, let's do no more than 90 minutes and then take 2 or 3 minutes, go for a walk, do some exercise, whatever that may be. And if I find myself in one of those moments where, yeah, you do have that brain fog because of, I don't know, complex tasks, then yeah, it is right. Just take yourself out there for a walk for a period. It's critical.
I mean, I'm no different. I have this on my desk and I sit here sometimes. I set a timer on my desk. You've got 20 minutes, focus here, do this, deliver, do what you need to do, go away from your desk, come back, set another 30-minute timer on the way I go. And I have that because it's in my business and what I do is part of my process. Now, the other side of that, because we're singing off the same hymn sheet there, is that I don't have a process in place. I don't have a playbook as we've used in this language. I sit here and then all of a sudden I find myself dwelling or getting sidetracked or getting caught up in something else or flicking through Facebook or Instagram or whatever it may be. And then, Matt, I'm really struggling with procrastination. And then we start believing that our identity is one that I procrastinate, I'm this, I'm that. And now we're dealing with, okay, this is the best way to manage procrastination. It's like, no. Like, let's strip this back. The reason is because from the get-go here, we haven't got playbook, emotional tools in place. And I know this is in a light way, we're explaining this here, but emotional tools in place for you to enhance how you want to feel in these moments. Procrastination is just coming in as a byproduct, the same way anxiety turns up as a byproduct. When you deal with the deeper, the core of it, these traits don't need to show up in these ways.
To talk about this for hours.
No, welcome to my world. It is. That's what I love doing.
Yeah, I've got a few more questions, but I'm also, of course, aware of the time. I suppose, yeah, one question before we look at little takeaways would be around certain people's ability to look inside of themselves and then to actually put the learnings in place. Yeah, would you have any advice for maybe that person out there who's listening to this, who's like, yeah, I don't know, just listening to this and thinking, yeah, this all sounds great, but boy, do I really struggle to actually make the changes.
Right. I think a couple of things with this. I think the foundation of anyone's progress is a word that someone said to me long ago, and I never really understood it, but now I really do, is a word called ownership. And what I mean by ownership is not taking blame, not blaming ourselves, which people can go down the route of, it's my fault I'm feeling this way. It's no one's fault. It's no one's problem. This is definitely not a finger pointing process, but it is our responsibility. And when we can take responsibility, ownership, as I call it, of regardless of what he's done, she's done, whether the manager's left me out, whether that club's let me go, whatever it may be, and I can start to say, right, what can I do to affect change? What can I do to apply some strategies? What do I need to learn to be able to make myself feel more emotionally in control, enhance my emotional state? Then all of a sudden, I'm not looking out there for answers anymore. We start to go internal. The question becomes, what can I do? Not, what do I need out there for someone? Or what someone needs to do this, or you shouldn't be acting that way to me, or you trigger me, or I can't play for that manager. It's like, no, like what, and I'm including myself in this because I fell down this path. What gives anyone the God-given right to think that they are the center of the universe? Like, we're the center of our own universes, absolutely, but we're not the center of the universe. And so when you can take that ownership from that perspective, you start to look at this and start to look at it from a perspective of, right, what do I need to learn? What do I need to grow? Where do I need to grow? What do I need to enhance? What within me do I need to update? Because then you'll start to look down different avenues in life. You'll start to follow different people. You'll start to listen to podcasts like this as an example. And the reasons that people are listening to this podcast right now is because they're looking for a certain part of that. All of a sudden, then you then go down a route of going, right, my language again. What do I need to do to put myself in control of me? So regardless of if I'm dropped, regardless of what he says, regardless of what she says, I'm in control. But again, the foundation of that starts with ownership. The fine line is most people have a battle with themselves between what's ownership and what's blame. And as human beings, we don't want to blame ourselves, nor am I blaming anyone. Like I said, regardless of what's gone on, I don't believe anyone's to blame for this. But where you are is your responsibility, is my responsibility when it comes to me. That just comes from a place of saying, right, what's been's gone, what can I do right now? That's ownership to me. That's what I think is, for the listener, one of the key things. A term I've heard as well, which is great, is radical transparency, which is having a radically transparent approach and going, right, where is it I'm not satisfied or happy or content with currently in my life? Because if that's in my performance at work, forget saying, my boss treats me this way, my boss does that. That might be true, and believe you me, that needs to be dealt with in an appropriate way. So I'm not neglecting that. But that doesn't change your situation right now. What does is what you can own and grow and change and take control within yourself.
When you talk about the blame side of things, I can see how, a lot of people with blame and criticism, they can turn it inwards as well on themselves, and they're very self-critical. And I guess jealousy as well can be like a real strong emotion that they can feel, where they're, especially in this world with social media, where they can look around and compare themselves to people an awful lot. So there's something in trying to be kinder to yourself and redirecting yourself back to yourself and not other people.
Absolutely. You're 100% right, because, when you look at jealousy as an example, and, when you do what I do, you see these patterns, but you're like, okay, why does anyone feel jealous? Well, I feel jealous because that person has what I want and I don't have it. Okay, but why are you jealous? Because if they have that, that means that they might get praise, they might get adulation, they might get recognition, which is what I want. Okay, so that's really what we're jealous of. It's not we're jealous of what they're doing, it's we're jealous of what they're receiving as a result of that. Cool. So what that highlights to me is there is a feeling within me of being out of control from that love, that recognition, that support, that part there that is producing this trait of jealousy. Now I use this emotion as a way to try and keep me away. So if I can work with that person to say, right, how can we enhance and create more of that love, more of that recognition, more of that closeness, more of that adulation within yourself? And I have many different methods and different therapeutic ways that I do go through this with people, and we start to enhance that, then all of a sudden, like what you see so many times with successful people, they don't become jealous of someone. They're more of a good on you. I'm really pleased for you as well because I feel it. So now I'm happy that you are. When I didn't feel it, I was jealous. Now I have it. I'm pleased for you as well. And that's the sort of key differences of where all of this comes from what I teach and what I do.
Yeah, to a degree, there's growth mindset in there, isn't there? Where, yeah, you look at other people and you seek to learn from them essentially. Let's say, look, we could go on for a while. How can you sum this up into 3 key takeaways for the listeners? Over to you.
Three key takeaways, as I say, and I appreciate your time as well with this. 3 key takeaways. I would say my first takeaway is what I said there, is how can you, regardless of the situation, and I'm never invalidating or neglecting what anyone's ever been through, whatever challenge they may be facing, but how is it that you can look internal? How is it that you can take ownership of this within yourself, regardless of what's been, regardless of blame or fault or anything like that? Because that key first bit there, the ownership, is going to give you the key to unlock the second step, which is, right, how can I enhance my control around this? So ownership being the first step, second step being control. And what I mean by control is not controlling out there, but controlling how I feel around certain situations, like I explained there with the jealousy. How can I enhance more love? How can I enhance more self-connection? How can I enhance more confidence? How can I enhance more fill in the blank, whatever it may be to someone, passion within me? And then my third step around that is, like anything, the best way that I've found that fast tracks that is surround yourself in an environment that is exactly promotes that. You know, the listeners of this podcast, they are here because you mentioned it a moment ago, there's a growth mindset. There's a certain element to them that wants to grow, that wants to learn, that wants to be in that environment. You know, the quite crass analogy that I use for this is like, if you want to lose weight, but your friends want to spend every single day in McDonald's, it's going to be very hard for you. And the analogy around that is, if you're looking to take control and you want to take ownership and you want to say, you know what, this isn't going to define me, I'm going to be in control. You know what, things that happen within out there, they can happen. It's not that I'm a robot. Of course, I'm affected by different situations, but I don't stay caged by them. But I'm in an environment where people are blaming, people are low on their energy, low on their vibe, low on their nature, and looking to pin and jealousy. It's going to be very hard to stay in that place. So they would be my 3 key takeaways: is ownership, then start to look at, right, where is it I need to enhance the emotional control within myself? And third, creating and surround yourself in an environment that promotes that. Because once you do that, believe you me, results in whatever area of life you're looking for results, anxiety, fear, phobias, whatever it may be, they can happen a lot faster and a lot quicker than probably what people currently believe.
No, look, Matt, they're fantastic messages for the listeners, for the viewers there. Yeah, I'm really, really grateful for your time that you've given today. It's been fantastic. Whereabouts can the listeners, can the viewers find you if they want to reach out to you?
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate that a lot. I mean, people can find me on social media. That's mattyoung LC, MATTYOUNG, and then C, the letter L, letter C. That's on pretty much each social media platform there. People can check me out on my website, again, www.mattyounglc.com. And then around that, I mean, wherever they want to Google me, there's different things that where people will be able to find online about previous things of what I've done, or on YouTube, and some of my trainings of what we do. So there's many different avenues where people can explore. But yeah, by all means, feel free to reach out. And if I can give you some advice or some pointers in some way, I'll be happy to do so.
notes. Well, yeah, all those details will be in the show notes. And again, yeah, a big thank you for today.
No worries, and thank you for having me on. As I said, I'd listened to a couple of episodes prior and I really, really enjoyed them. So I appreciate you having me on as well. So thank you very much.
Brilliant. Well, that's been a really fun conversation with Matt that I've spread over the 2 episodes. We've covered some practical, actionable stuff that I think can genuinely help people. So thanks to Matt for being so generous with his time and his insights. Let me pull out what I think are the key takeaways from today. First, there's this fundamental shift in perspective. Emotions don't have to be things that just happen to you. They're things that you can choose to use if you wish. That's a reframe that changes everything, because it means that you're not just a victim of your anxiety or your procrastination. You can seize control and you can do something about them, even if you haven't realized it just yet. Second, we talked a lot about building your playbook. This isn't about managing your way through life. It's about proactively creating the systems and the processes and the emotional tools that set you up for success from the start. Whether that's Matt's timer or it might be the 90-minute work blocks that I mentioned. It's about designing your day, your environment, and your approach so that unwanted traits become unnecessary. Then thirdly, I think it's crucial to look at ownership. Not blame, not self-criticism, but genuine responsibility, self-responsibility. Taking a step back from all the external noise and asking yourself, what is it I can actually control here? What is my responsibility? That's where your power lies. Matt's 3 takeaways, well, they're simple but profound. Own your situation, enhance your emotional control, and surround yourself in an environment that supports your growth. These aren't quick fixes. They're the building blocks for lasting change. But here's one thing I want to leave you with as you go forward. Think about one area of your life where you feel stuck right now. Maybe it's anxiety, procrastination. Maybe it's fear of failure or fear of success or something completely different. Now ask yourself honestly, have you been trying to manage it? Or have you been willing to go deeper and take control of it? Or even have you been trying to master what it is that you want to get over? And if you've been trying to manage it, what would change if you shifted that perspective to take real ownership, take real control and be that master? That's where the real work happens. The real transformation happens. Thanks so much for joining us again on another episode of the Demystifying Mental Toughness podcast. Looking forward to seeing you again next week with another fantastic guest. If you enjoyed this episode of the Demystifying Mental Toughness podcast with David Charlton, do check out my website, sport-excellence.co.uk, and my online sport psychology resources. The Sport Excellence website has essential resources for anyone looking to build their own mental toughness or the mental toughness of their athletes or teams, or if you want to achieve peak performance more often or optimal functioning. The Sport Excellence website has everything you need to keep moving forward and thrive. So go on, head over to sport-excellence.co.uk to find out more.